Hey everyone, welcome. You've heard it a million times, right? Maybe you've even said it yourself. Who am I to judge? It's this idea that, right and wrong are basically just opinions. Well, today, we're going to put that idea under the microscope and see if it actually holds up.
You know the old saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Super common advice, right? And look, on the surface it makes perfect sense. Be a good guest, respect local customs, don't rock the boat. Sounds like a great rule for traveling. But you gotta ask, how far do you take that? Yeah, what happens when that local custom is a little more intense than just, say, eating your salad after the main course? Because doing as the Romans do is one thing. But what if we're talking about an ancient Roman custom, like feeding criminals to lions for fun? Suddenly, just going with the flow doesn't seem so simple, does it? That easy advice gets real complicated real fast. All right, so here's what we've got on tap. First, we're going to break down this whole it's all relative idea. Then we'll get into the tricky parts, the dilemmas, and when tolerance goes wrong. After that, we'll look for a better way, a path through all this. And finally, we'll land on that big final question, to judge or not?
Okay, let's dive in. To really get to the bottom of that phrase, who am I to judge, we've got to look at the philosophy behind it. And that means asking some seriously big questions about what morality even is. When we do that, we're actually stepping into a whole field of study.
And that field is called metaethics. So instead of just asking, hey, is this thing wrong? Metaethics takes a step back and asks, wait a minute, what does wrong even mean in the first place? It's the bedrock, the foundation for everything we're talking about today.
So inside this big field of metaethics, we meet the main character of our story today, moral relativism. This is the big idea, right? The belief that there are no universal, capital T truths about morality. Nope. Instead, what's right or wrong is only true relative to a person or usually a whole culture. So if a group says something is okay, then for them, it's okay. End of story.
You can kind of see how this idea builds up step by step. It starts with something pretty obvious, something we can all see. Philosophers call it descriptive relativism. It's just the observation that, yep, different cultures have different rules. Simple enough. But then it takes a huge leap. It jumps to metaethical relativism, which says moral truth itself is relative. And from there, it actually gives you an order, normative relativism. This is the one that says you should never judge another culture's ethics as being worse than yours. And that last step, that's the really powerful, really controversial one.
And this is where we run into a pretty big problem. Because if you really, truly buy into that last step, the strongest version of relativism, you walk right into a logical trap. Let's play this out and see what happens.
So here's the question we have to ask. If you're a consistent relativist, if you really believe no moral code is better than any other and truth is just local, can you ever, in a way that makes logical sense, condemn what another person or another group is doing?
The answer? An absolute, unequivocal never. You can't. A true, consistent relativist is completely stuck. They can't ever make a moral judgment about another culture's actions. It would completely contradict their own philosophy. You basically give up your right to object.
And this is exactly where the philosophy crashes head-on into our deepest human instincts. I mean, think about it. As Sean says here, if you suspect a kid is being abused, your first thought isn't going to be, well, their family's culture might be different. Who am I to judge? No way. Your gut screams at you to do something, to protect them. In a case like that, being judgmental feels not just okay, but like the only right thing to do.
So this is where we see that something that starts out sounding really good, tolerance, can get really troubling when it's pushed to this extreme. Let's take a hard look at the consequences of an anything-goes philosophy.
There's a cool philosophical tool for this. It's called a reductio ad absurdum. Basically, you take an idea and follow it to its logical and often absurd conclusion to see if it holds water. So let's try it. If moral relativism is 100% true, then we have to accept that for the cultures that practice them, things like slavery or the Holocaust were morally right, just because those societies said so. Now, I think we can all agree that conclusion is absolutely horrifying. And when the conclusion is that monstrous, it's a giant red flag that the original idea is deeply flawed.
It also messes with our whole idea of moral progress. Think about the abolition of slavery. We look at that and we say, yes, that was progress. We moved from something terrible to something better. But if you're a strict relativist, you can't say that. There's no such thing as better. All you can say is that it was a moral change. Society's opinion just shifted. So people like the abolitionists, they weren't heroes making society better. They were just changing the channel. It's a pretty bleak way to look at history, isn't it?
Okay, so if pure relativism leads us down these really dark paths, what's the alternative? Does that mean we have to swing the other way and just condemn anyone who's different from us? Not at all. Thankfully, there's a much better, much more workable middle ground.
And that alternative is called moral pluralism. And here's a good way to think about it. If relativism is kind of tolerance to a fault, then pluralism is tolerance at its best. See, pluralism doesn't say all moral codes are equal. What it does say is that there's lots of room for diversity, lots of different ways to live a good life. But, and this is the crucial part, it draws a line, it sets boundaries. And that boundary is the whole ballgame. Moral pluralism is all about live and let live, up to a point. And that point is when you cause unjustified harm to other people. It says, hey, your customs, your beliefs, that's great. But it does not give a free pass to actions that hurt people, no matter how ancient or accepted the tradition is. And that gives us a universal line in the sand.
And hey, if you're thinking, well, this is just your take on it, it's really not. This idea, rejecting pure relativism, is actually the mainstream view among the experts. A big survey of professional philosophers found that fewer than 28% fall into the camp that even includes relativism. So most of the people who think about this stuff for a living, they actually do believe that there are some objective moral truths out there.
All right, so let's circle back to where we started, to that big question about judging. After going through all of this, where does that leave us? You know, the truth is, we can't actually escape it. We just can't. We live in a world where everything we do can affect someone else, and everything they do can affect us. So making judgments isn't some kind of moral weakness, it's a basic survival skill. We judge things all day, every day, just to get by, to navigate our lives, to keep our communities safe. It's just part of the deal of being a person. So maybe, just maybe, we've been asking the wrong question this whole time. Maybe the real challenge isn't whether we should judge, it's how we can do it well. How can we be thoughtful and humble and understand different cultures while still holding on to that core fundamental idea that causing unjustified harm is wrong? Wrong for me, wrong for you, wrong for everyone everywhere. Now that is the real question to wrestle with. Thanks for joining me on this one.